Oh, Juliani, oh, I was mute. I'm saying let's wait for around 2-3 minutes, then we can start.
Okay, perfect.
Welcome, Colleen, Rebecca, and Wilma.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi,
Sorry.
everybody.
Ciao, Vilma.
Ciao.
Hello.
Ciao, Bella.
Oh, one person is joining, then we can just start. Let's wait for her to join. And yes, we can start our discussion. I'm just so happy to see new faces today. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes.
Yes. So I just want to welcome each and every one of you to today's talk, Sisters Keepers Talk. And today our main speaker is Julian Bertalgia. She's from Brazil. She's our Sisters Keeper representing South America. And she's going to take us through the power of gender equality in realizing food security. And I just want to welcome each and every one of you, wherever you are, for taking your time to join us on a Wednesday. I know it's so hard. I just want to appreciate you and thank you very much. And the conversation will be for 1 hour, and I hope it will be an inclusive conversation. If you have any question, kindly just write it on the chat box, or if you have any comments, please do write on the chat box. We really appreciate. You can also follow us on social media at Twitter at Zahara's Dream, also Instagram at Zahara's Dream. We'll really value your output for the meeting. Yeah, so we can just start. Julian, you can just start. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hukeshi. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, or good night from wherever you are now. I'm so happy for this conversation. And I really hope, as Okashi said, it'll be an engaging conversation. So any moment, just please come in and share your perspectives and write down your questions. Thank you. Irene, could you please share the presentation so we can start? Thank you. Thank you so much, Irene. So, as you are aware of it, today we are going to have a short conversation. I mean a short because we could spend much more hours and days discussing the power of gender equality for food security. But I will bring you today a short overview of what it means gender equality for the agenda of food security. I'm a lawyer, so I hope this will not be, it's not supposed to be so technical presentation, but in any case, I will try to bring some reference also to from a legal perspective. And my area of work and study is food law, is food security, and of course, the interlinkage with gender equality. So next slide, please. So next slide, please. So let's briefly start taking a look at the definition of food security. So basically here I chose to adopt a definition which is widely accepted and recognized worldwide because it's a result of a process of agreement among parties, among head of government authorities, and on the occasion of the World Summit on Food Security, which was held at FAO the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, which is headquartered in Rome, in Italy. So from this meeting, from the several meetings actually that preceded this meeting, this World Summit, and in 2009 specifically, they finally agreed on a definition of food security. That is, food security exists when all people at all times have physical, social, and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food to meet their dietary needs and food preference for an active and healthy life. This basically actually means that people have the secure access to enough food, enough quantity and quality of food that allow them to have a normal growth and development and have an active and healthy life. So from this definition, we can pick up four dimensions that are the basis of food security, and more recently, two other dimensions that I would like to share with you in the next slide. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have these six dimensions actually. We have four that are classic, that are the foundations of food security. So from that definition, we can immediately understand that we are talking about, when we are talking about food security, we are referring to stability, to agents, to utilization, access, availability, and sustainability. And stability, for instance, means that even in the occurrence of sudden shocks like climate change, climate crisis, or even a pandemic, or an economic crisis, or a war conflict, we should ensure food security. So this, in short term, we are referring to the stability itself, and in the long term, we are referring to sustainability, which means that we have to ensure food security not only for the present generations, but also for the future generations. So we cannot compromise the food needs of the future generations. From passing by to these two aspects, we have also the agents and utilization. And agents here, it's really important for our conversation because it refers to the people actually that are part of food security. At the individual level, the people and the individual and the people, the community that actually have access, are engaged in this choice of food and have this collective capacity to make your own decisions on what they should eat on, or how food should be produced and processed or even distributed. So the agents aspect dimension refers to the engagement of people, and this includes women, include young children, and also elderly people, and most instance, it's more related to the way we actually combine our knowledge to the consumption of food. So how we prepare our food, how we diversify our diet, or how we distribute the consumption of food at an intra-household level. And the access means, of course, the physical access. Everybody should be able to have this access, the physical access to food on a continuous basis. And also a social access, which means that this food should be accepted in a determined culture. And the economic access, that means that if people do not have enough resources to buy this food, at least they should sorry, if they cannot produce food on their own, at least they should have the resource to buy the food. Next slide, please. And what is the context of food systems and food security? How are they linkage with gender equality? Here we can perceive there are many different drivers that influence food systems, and for food systems I'm referring more broadly to all the actors that are involved in the food system, and also all the steps and process that are involved in food systems, like the research, the transport, the processing, the manufacturing, the retailing, and also the consumption of food itself. And one of the most important drivers from the social cultural aspect is actually the women's empowerment and the gender equality. So why are they considered social cultural drivers of food system? Because obviously gender relationships and the way, for instance, gender norms are put in place will influence the distribution of food, the production of food, this food environment, and also our consumption, the diets. And women's empowerment in this process, it means that women will have also the responsibility, but at the same time the rights to have access and control over resource, and will be able to produce this food, or they will have capacities, technological capacities and knowledge to be able to be part of the food system in an inclusive manner. Next slide, please. So then we come to the definition. What is gender equality, and how is this actually related to food system? Gender equality, I chose the definition adopted by the World Food Program, is related to the fact that women and men should have the same right, opportunities, and entitlements. And this means that both women and men are treated equally, but not necessarily they are the same. So uh, the concern here is that we have to ensure that the responsibilities and opportunities will not depend on whether someone is born as a female or a male. And women's empowerment is the process in which the women will have the opportunity to develop their power, to have control over resource, and will also develop this ability to use the right and the opportunities that this environment of gender equality allow them to make the most informed choice and decisions regarding what they would like. In this case, we are talking about the consumption and also the production of food. So this, again, women's empowerment is the process, and gender equality is this enabling environment that allows this process to be put in place. Next slide, please. So let's put numbers into perspective here. How gender equality and why gender equality matters for food security. According to the most recent data of the World Food Program and FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, uh, at a global level, in nearly 2/3 of countries, women are more likely than men to report food insecurity. So women are more likely to live in the situation of food security, which means they do not have access to enough food that will ensure their regular development and also meet their dietary needs and energy. So The other data we have is that the equal access to productive resource, and for productive resource, I'm referring to land, to water, or even to credit, to loans and technologies, they can lift 100 million to 150 million people out of hunger. So it's extremely important to guarantee to have gender equality, to guarantee zero hunger. So this is the key message of this data. And also that, of course, we have gender gaps when it comes to accessing this productive resource. And third, we have the data that globally there are 122 women, young women aged 25 to 34 years old, living in extreme poverty for every 100 men of the same age group. So this leads us to the conclusion that there are more women living the situation of being extremely poor, which means that they live on less than $2 a day. Next slide, please. So having said that, having put these numbers that actually confirm these inequalities and why it's important to have gender equality to overcome these barriers, I would like to mention again that the World Food Programme is clearly stated that gender equality is a must for a world of zero hunger. So in a zero hunger world where all women, men, girls and boys can exercise their human rights, including the right to adequate food. So the world nowadays, as I showed before, unfortunately is not on track to achieve the zero hunger, and we have the target, the global target to achieve zero hunger by 2030. But it's important to recognize that if we do not reach gender equality, this target, the achievement of this target will be compromised, as well as all the other objectives and targets of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And here I would like to emphasize three objectives of the agenda that are the objective one, to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. So for instance, the more informed the women are, the more cash we give in their hands, uh, the better education they can have, and also the better nutrition and health outcomes for women and also for young girls. And the SDG 2 refers to the end hunger, achieving food security and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture as well. And this means to us that women can play a critical role in food production, processing, distribution. So therefore, it's essential to meet these SDG as well, and to increase access of smallholder farmers, especially women, in rural areas to agricultural land, markets and finances, trainings and knowledge, and also innovative practice. And the other SDG refers exactly to achieving gender equality and empower all women and girls. And this objective is central to the agenda, and if it's not achieved, as I said, all the implementation of the agenda will be compromised. And next slide, please. Having said that, I would like to go through the problem itself, that is the gender gaps. And the gender gaps, as I mentioned, is the context where the gender inequality creates these barriers, these disadvantages for women compared to men. And we have this data as well, this conclusion that compared to men, women are more likely to be affected by moderate or severe food insecurity in all continents. I mean, not only in Latin America. Here we have precisely highlighting Latin America, but in all continents at global level. So, which means that they can be forced to compromise the quality or the quantities of the foods they consume if they are affected by moderate or severe food insecurity. And the next conclusion is that at, the gender gap in food security is larger among the poorest and the least educated and those living in urban areas. So in the suburbs, for instance, of large cities. So this means that we still, have to understand how improve the access of these women to the market, so they can become a workforce and they can buy their own food, or how to address health problems in these regions, because of course this is also part of being aware of the importance of food for your own health. Next slide, please. Now, going again through the gender gaps, I would like to mention some of these gender gaps, including the legal barriers that we can face in certain societies, and which are actually patriarchal norms, referring, for instance, for domestic violence, and customary law, that is the law based on the traditionals, that can actually create obstacles to women's access and control over these assets that we allow them to produce and to consume food. And also, another problem is the burden in the case of women, the burden of care economy. So women are tend to be more dedicated to the housework activities, and this can prevent them to exercise paid work, or can actually make them not decide to not engage with paid work and be, of course, more vulnerable. And the other problem is that women's farmers face challenge in accessing agricultural inputs, as I said, land, financial resource, financial service, and also technology. So it's extremely important to ensure capacity building to engage more these women with financial institutions and financial transitions. And this would allow them to have a more efficient and produce a bigger volume of crops, so produce more food and have more access to this food as well. And last, I would refer to the food preference and consumption patterns that actually can impact the nutrition of family members. And for instance, at the household level, you can have a different distributions among men, the father and the mother, or among the children, according to their sex and their age. Next slide, please. And another gaps refer to the access to primary education and also secondary education and trainings that would allow women to develop their skills, to improve their agricultural production and their management over the research. And of course, this really would lead to increasing their capacity and productivity. And the next gap is that women are more likely to be affected by climate change events. So this, of course, can create a barrier for them to access to land again, to find a service, and this will have implications on their access to food. And third, women are often excluded or underrepresented in decision-making process. So if they do not have a representation, if they cannot speak out, Of course, they can face also restrictions and do not influence the process of making the food system being more inclusive. Next slide, please. From now, I would like to ask you if you would like to share what are some of the gender gaps in your community that have impacted, have negative effects on food security. If someone would like to come in and share your perspectives, your experience.
Thank you so much, Julian.
Hi.
If it, hi,
Hello.
just talk.
Yes.
Hello.
Okay. Can I speak?
Yes, you
Are you
can.
listening? Okay. This is Rebecca. I'm from Brazil, also from Rio. So I think the negative effects on the gaps we have here in Brazil. I mean, especially in my region here in Rio, the big city, that affects negatively on food security is especially now with the pandemic, women are taking care of the children at home. I mean, the parents now sometimes one has lost his or hers jobs, and the women are staying at home. I mean, not working online and taking care of the children to let the man to work. I think this is a problem here, and also in the communities. Sometimes women cannot work also to take care of the children because we don't have enough child care for all children, so, and they can afford a private one, and women has to stay at home and not work. So I think this affects directly on food security here. This is the main problem I see here in the city, I mean.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Any last person who has to add something just coming?
I would. It's amazing. Rebecca just said what I was thinking about. Rebecca just said, what am I trying to say? She basically just said the same thing that I wanted to say as far as this question relates to the US. Juliana, you definitely pointed it out. I think that access to jobs and education and jobs that pay women well enough for them to support themselves and their families is a barrier, because it is my belief that from my perspective, a lot of times women are unequally paid, and just as Rebecca said, they're kind of seen as having this role of taking care of the children, and not really, because of that, some people or companies believe that they shouldn't be paid that much. But a lot of times, at least in my community, women are single and having to take care of their kids as single parents. And so I definitely feel like, not having that job that pays them well enough to get access to the food that would support the health and development of themselves and their kids is, you know, how I see food security and gender equality coming together in my community in the US.
Thank you very much, Helen. And Juliani, can I come in and talk about my country? Yeah, so I'm from Kenya, and the main problem when it comes to food security and gender equality is the fact that women still cannot own land. So they don't have a land even to do agricultural produce, even if they want to. And also the fact that women are still being excluded in decision-making processes when it comes to issues of food security. It's been seen as a man's work. So most of them don't engage in those activities. And also the one that you said that women are, they are being left on the home duties, so they care for their children, and this limits their chances of even getting more money to sell their produce and that. And I think just the same reasons as the one that my sister from Brazil just said, they're almost the same things. But the main issue is women are still being excluded when it comes to food security because of their gender. So Amanda wants to come in. Amanda, you can come in before we continue to the next slide.
Okay, so I think another relation between food security and a gender approach is that when we talk about food security, I think that normally we were talking about the people that are in the field. So people that are not living in the cities or maybe far away from the big city centers. And I think that because of this, these people, they are already in a situation of more vulnerability. So when we talk about, oh yeah, it's harder for women because they have to take care of their kids and also the house and all of this double workflow. When we talk about women living in the field, there's also this extra vulnerability that should be considered, I think.
Thank you very much. I've seen someone also has raising her hand up. Sandra, is it Sandra?
Yes, it's me.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add that even in the privileged country like Italy, where I'm studying at the moment, I also have the information of that since December of 2020, 90% of who has lost the jobs were women actually. So we are going also backwards, even in Europe, forcing women to the traditional role of being a mother with the children at home. And also, while my parents are living in Germany now, there's also a thing that I have spoken to my mom yesterday. She went out of her labor union, as well as her husband. They're working at the same company because there was not done enough that women could get the same amount of money at the end of month as men. And the labor union told the women that if they want to get the same amount of money, they would have to work more, actually, more hours than the men, doing the same, having the same position. That's all I wanted to say for it.
Thank you so much, Sandra. Juliani, you can go on with the presentation.
Yes. Oh, Irene, come in.
Come in, Irene, come in.
Sorry, I just wanted to emphasize something very important that I think emerged from Juliana's presentation, and is also the climate change impacts. Since this is my area of expertise, I just wanted to reiterate that, yes, climate change really impacts, tend to impact and affect women more than men, generally worldwide. And one of the situations that we can see, for instance, in some parts of the world is that climate change impacts force men to leave their homes leave their villages and seek work elsewhere, for example, in big cities, and leaving women behind. And these women find themselves with increased household responsibilities in sometimes degraded environments or environments affected by climate change effects, like droughts or floodings. And these can actually affect their food security and their ability to provide food for their families. And they end up being very much dependent on the money that men send from the big cities. So yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that aspect. Thank you so much, Juliana, for bringing it in. And also what Okech said related to land access and control, that's absolutely true. The fact that women are not really considered and involved in decision making when it comes to how land is used and what crops are, for instance, chosen, etc., can really affect their food security, especially when men are not around. So thank you. I just wanted to share that.
Thank you very much, Irene. I guess now, Juliana, you can continue.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for the comments. I just want to highlight and sum up perhaps everything you've mentioned. I mean, this is extremely important, right? The what we call the double burden of women holding paid jobs and unpaid work. So you have to take care of your the housework, and at the same time you have to get a job outside your work, or you'll be prevented for working outside. So this we call this double burden, and also the fact that we still face this problem of lower pay associated with this type of job. So men's and women's are paid differently, as mentioned, and I mean this can also prevent women's to going to engaging with paid work. So this certainly is a problem and affects food security, because they at the end they will be more dependent on the income of their husband or other male female members, so therefore they will be more vulnerable. So thank you very much for the comments. So next slide, please. So what does constitute an enabling environment? What does help us to address the gender inequality and promote gender equality in this sense? So as we've raised these problems, these issues, one of the solutions is to promote the access of women to quality, formal, or even non-formal education. So we have to invest substantially in increasing these educational opportunities, this educational access for both girls and boys. And we have a data from UNESCO, for instance, that worldwide 1 in 4 girls aged 15 and 19 years old are neither in education, in employment, or any other activities, compared to 1 in 10 boys. So we have 6 people difference here. So 1 in 4 girls compared to 1 in 10 boys. So of course we have to improve this participation and this access to quality education. The second point is increasing the development opportunities like vocational trainings. So the fact that you have access to education, for instance, can raise your chance to get a job, but not necessarily, this is not necessarily translated into employability. So it's also important to overcome these barriers and to promote, for instance, specific jobs focus on this diversification, or even through mentoring programs that can allow women to access the work market. And the third point is the access to agriculture innovation. So if we can allow women to have more access to innovations, which means to overcome or even compensate these barriers and improve their competitiveness, and they will be able, as a consequence, to even access more markets and even access export markets. So they can produce and sell what they produce. They can produce food in a more effective way. So this actually impacts all the agro-food chain from the production to the consumption at the end. And the fourth way to promote this enabling environment is to providing this financial, to contribute to provide this financial autonomy, that is to promote the access of women to financial service. So nowadays we can perceive that there are a lot of challenges in accessing for women, for instance, in accessing international markets than do men. So this is an obstacle related to requirements, to regulations, but also to the access to credit, to the access to the financial service. And other point is to promote the access to health information and adequate health care, especially now that we are living in the pandemics, in a pandemics context. And last but not least, from this slide is I would highlight the promotion of decent work for women as well. We have this data that women constitute over 6% of the workforce in agriculture in low-income countries and nearly 30% in middle-income countries. So their participation is very high. So it's really important also to promote policies and measures that will promote equal pay between men and women. Next slide, please. And other factors that can contribute as well to promote the gender equality are the ones listed here. And I would point out the need to increase awareness of and recognize the gender roles and relations. What does it mean? I mean, it means that sometimes we have to start from the beginning and to start talking about gender equality and start raising our voices and demanding companies, demanding the work market, sorry, for opportunities. So we can actually bring this perspective that actually women can occupy all the spaces they want, all the space they need. But first, we need also to raise awareness of this importance. Secondly, this is less known, but it's very important for agriculture, for instance, is the implementation of the certification initiatives that create standards that are related to the promotion of gender equalities and women's empowerment. They can play a key role in contributing to influence the consumer's choice. So of course, if I know that a product or a service is able during its value chain to promote gender equality, as a consumer, I'm more likely to consume this product or this service. So certifications are really important as well from this market perspective. And the other criteria is ensure rural women's engagement in the implementation of agriculture and rural policies, as Okash mentioned. We have legal instruments to promote this, but I mean, it's not necessarily, we do not necessarily rely on legal instruments. This can be promoted at community level, you know, and promote this engagement, these conversations with women that are farmers or they're affected somehow by food insecurity issues. And increase science is really important as well. So we should increase women's participation in research decisions. We should engage more women in research and development. And the other two I would point out is to improve the access to timely information. So what does it mean, timely information? Is that the information, the needed information can actually influence the decision making or the choices of these women. So for instance, we have a platform that was launched a couple of years ago by the United Nations Women that is called Buy from Women. So it's a safe space for women, smallholders to negotiate with buyers and financial institutions so they can sell their product in a more safe space. And at a personal level, of course, transform our beliefs and attitudes, and to raise our voices and to be a more active participation in raising the importance of gender equality. Next slide, please. So now I would like to listen to your opinions and perspectives as well. So how you can promote, we can promote gender equality in addition to these examples, or how have you promoted gender equality in your community?
Thank you so much, Juliani. If anybody has any comment or want to ask the question, you can just come in or raise your hand.
Now is the best part. We should focus on solutions. We have focused on the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, Rebecca, come in.
Hello. So I think here in the city, I talked before about and other girls also talked about it, how women has much more work than men at home, for instance, and how women cannot also go to work sometimes or come back to school, for example, because of the children. So I think, and I think the child care, I don't know if it's this place is this name in English, sorry. The child care institutions should be improved for poor women. I mean, in the context of cities, because we have some, but they are not sufficient. And also, for example, now with the pandemic, I think this is a problem that everybody faces, and not only here in Brazil, but children are more at home because the schools were closed and the childcare was also closed. But I think the improvement of education and child care institutions, so women can let the children to go to school or go to these institutions to be cared during the day. I think it's the one of the solutions we could improve here, and to let women to go to work or to come back to school to study and to have more access to education and to workforce.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. Colleen, you can come in.
Thank you. Again, I really love what Rebecca just said, and I kind of want to piggyback off of that. My first initial thought is that personally, I like the idea of supporting women and especially the children that kind of have the need right now for food security. I know that, so where I am in the US, there is this program in a lot of the public schools called free and reduced lunch. And it kind of, it's a program that, well, just as the name implies, it provides food for those kids who have kind of been identified as being essentially food insecure. So over the years, the type of food that has been given hasn't really been the healthiest. So the point that I'm trying to make is that, like, in the present moment, I really would like to see like a program like that strengthened for women and their kids and their families, where it's kind of like they are susceptible to food insecurity. So having institutions provide programs that meet the need. I kind of feel like my thinking is that, you know, these women need support, and I know that we've talked a lot about the need for better jobs that provide a better wage, but I think that, like, for me, like, in a way, I don't think we're saying that the solution has to be put on women solely, but I think that, like, in a sense, like, we should hold, you know, these institutions and, you know, our government, who is supposed to support its citizens, to a higher standard to provide those programs and support in the meantime. The other thing that I wanted to say was, you know, I love the aspect of the education component, and to Irene pointing out the climate change that is happening, I would like to see more education, both formal and informal, for young girls especially, that involves them in the problem-solving process of coming up with innovative ideas to address food insecurity. And I really like that point, because I think that, especially when you get, you know, youth and people involved, they're more invested. So I feel like providing innovative programs for young girls to kind of look at this problem and how it relates to them on a personal level will stay with them for the rest of their lives. And, you know, as they grow, they'll be more likely to, you know, have conversations like this and push policies that support, you know, food security for more people. That is all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Colleen. And actually, I want to also say about on the education part. In my country, Kenya, there's so much land in the rural areas, like and very fertile land that can really thrive through agriculture. But unfortunately, in the rural areas, we have high literacy level, and it's very high among women. So most of them don't even know how to do the agriculture. They just know the traditional form of agriculture, but the modern forms of agriculture, most of them don't know. So I think when it comes to education, we should also look at the digital parts, you know, the training part, but also look like we should take these women through adult education, where we teach them the basics when it comes to communication, when it comes to how to sell their produce. So I think it's not just about, it's about our institutions, it's up to them to make sure that they develop these policies so that women too can be included in the agricultural sector. So thank you, Ruani, you can come in.
Hello. Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
Ruani, we can hear you.
Yes, I just want to bring in a very South Asian context, if you may, basically. I think one of the main problems we have in terms of food security in our country, or in this part of the world, is that education in terms of even agriculture, or even like, fisheries, or like anything like that, don't get passed on to the future generations. The education system does not support that, and it is very difficult to make it a prospective, a prospective line of work that the next generation would want to follow. So it becomes very difficult to pass on that, even in terms of like, because women in my part of the world do get involved in agriculture. And then when it is not passed on, it becomes a problem. So education or training in that sense needs to happen, in my idea, or in my belief, from the very ground level. And that is what we are lacking, I believe, at this point.
Thank you, Ruani.
Thank you, Ruani. We're having about 3 minutes to end our discussion. If anybody wants to add any information, you're free. Do anybody wants to come in before we end our conversation? Okay, if you're all good, I think Julian, you can just come in and give us the last shots.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for this conversation, for joining the conversation today. And thank you, Ruan, for highlighting this final topic. Education, really, we have to unlock the power of education and have this conversation with the future generations. And I hope that we start doing it here. So after this conversation, we are gonna think more about it. And if you have any questions, you can go to the Zahara's Dream Twitter page or website, and we'll be able to join us and follow the next chats. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Juliani. I know it's very late in Sri Lanka, but thank you, Ruani, for joining us. I know it's almost 10:30 p.m. I just want to thank every one of you. And for those who don't know me, I'm Okecha Diambo. I'm the Zahara's Dream Lead Coordinator for Sisters Keepers. And again, I just want to thank you for joining us. We always have weekly discussions on our Zahara's Dream Facebook group. I think Ruani has sent the link to the group. You can join us. And also this Zoom talk, we always have it monthly. So for our next Zoom talk, I think it will be on the 14th of April. I think, and we'll be discussing the role of women in leadership and politics. And just like this conversation, I hope you will join us. And I love seeing new people in our discussions. And today I've seen so many new faces. I just want to thank you. Keep on joining us in our social media, and that's where we always talk about all the issues affecting young women. And I just hope that you'll enjoy our conversations. Once again, thank you very much, Irene, also for running Juliani's presentation. And also thank you very much, Juliani. The conversation was amazing. Personally, I've learned so much when it comes to food security. As much as we always see agriculture as a dirty job for young people, I think it's high time for us to take part in these processes and take part when it comes to agriculture, because without agriculture, I don't think we can be able to live. So I just want to thank you very much. And thank you again, everyone. And I hope to see you again for our next discussion in 14th April. Bye-bye.
See
Bye.
you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Good day.
Bye. Hey, Juliani.